So we are going to talk today. Our panel is Creating the Solution. My name is Rashida Watler. I own a lifestyle business management company and branding company. I deal with talent products all day long. I create the solutions as well. I also own a wine that's going to be later on introductory at the Mixer, Licata Wine, co-founder, co-owner alongside of Raekwon, which is the artist I manage. But enough about me. Let's loosen up. Let's have some fun in here. So our first panelist today is going to be Tiffany Polk from JP Morgan. Yes, Tiffany. Next, we have Sade from Google. Next, we have Brian Frazier, the Senior Product Manager from Birchbox. Let's hear it for Brian. And then next, we have Natalie Harris, the Director of People Operation at Eco. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome. How are you?
We're great. So everybody's ready? Everybody have their mics?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
So I guess I'm gonna start the questions off. What are some examples of the standout candidates that you've seen in the past, and what made them so? I'll let anybody grab the mic first.
So I'll start since we'll probably go down the line. So I am the global head of storage infrastructure for JP Morgan. I've been around infrastructure my whole career. I started my career as a network engineer, doing black box work in the U.S. Cleared work in the U.S. government. So I used to work in SCIFs, various places under security clearance, et cetera. And throughout my career, progressed into various places, realized that I didn't like a security clearance running my career. So I moved into the commercial space, moved into sales, and did some other things. So I've had a variety of experiences. Mm-hmm. I think that what I've seen, if I'm working on a top secret government contract, or if I'm working in a commercial space where I'm trying to execute on a $10 billion portfolio for HP Services, essentially your ability to be able to understand the business that you support is crucial. Right? Technologists who don't have business context are absolutely useless. You can work in the short term, right? And you can work in a box. You will not progress, and your value will not scale if you do not have business context and understanding. I know we talked a little bit earlier about relationships. Relationships can only take you so far if you don't have an understanding of the WIFM. What's in it for me is a critical understanding that you have to have, and it's not about you, it's about the WIFM for the people that you work with. So I think that for me, people having business context and having an understanding about the business that they're in is absolutely critical. And if you're a superior technologist and you have no interest in the business, I have no interest in you being on my team.
Nice. Tiffany, yes. So Tiffany, you believe it's more about the foundation set first as opposed to just, because people like to network. They feel that, getting that contact is going to put them in the game or create that solid job for them. And you say?
I say that's great, and that's a great first step. You will get past probably the first conversation if you don't have a solid understanding. Tawaka talked about the 5 businesses that we're in, right? The conversation I'm having with CIB, our investment bank, about their storage portfolio and their need for performance is very different from the conversation that I'm having with the corporate bank and the consumer bank about their need for scale and their need for understanding their latency needs from a consumer perspective versus understanding the latency needs for somebody who's working with traders. And so your ability to be able to understand that in the context of the service you provide is absolutely critical. And people won't tell you.
Right.
This is a really important thing.
I agree.
People will not tell you that you're clueless. They will just ignore you, and they will box you out.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah, well, to follow that, just something that stands out for me. I've been a recruiter at Google for about 3 years now, and so I worked with a lot of candidates coming in. And somebody that stands out right at the top of my head right now is someone where she was referred into Google by an engineering manager that she met while volunteering at Girls Who Code, if people are familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And which I thought was amazing that an engineering manager referred her based off of that connection versus actually seeing her technical skills. He saw the way she communicated with the girls. He saw the way that she was down to earth with them and could relate to them. And when I spoke with her on the phone, instantly I could see that passion. She worked at Starbucks and then she put herself through a coding boot camp, so she didn't have a traditional background. And so the thing that stood out with her was her passion. And even in her on-site interviews, even if her technical rating wasn't as high as she had hoped, every single interviewer commented, she wants to do this. She wants to be here. I want her on my team, because she has that drive. She has that passion that we're really looking for successful engineers. So I would just say to people to just be really passionate when you are going through the interview process, because the interviewers notice, the hiring managers notice, like they really want to see that you want to be here and understand that. So
That's a great tip.
Awesome. Yeah, to piggyback on Sade, I think social intelligence is very important. One thing that I will say is the power of no is very important. For me, the candidates that stand out are the ones that can say no and give a reason why. Especially when you look at the junior roles, they're so quick to say, yes, I'll do whatever, or yeah, sure, fine, that's great. But pushing back on certain aspects within the business, on your day-to-day, no matter what, I think it's important for you to have that and stand your ground. I think that's important in the candidates that do say and speak that mind of no are the ones that stand out to me, because I feel like they're strong within, their thought process, and they believe in themselves, even if they're wrong. So that's one thing for me that's very important.
So, Brian, you like the fact that people give their opinion as opposed to just a yes.
A fact-based, grounded opinion, yes, right?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Let's add that.
To clear it.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of them. But I'd just like to add, especially leading talent acquisition teams and really trying to understand what hiring managers need in technologists. I think sometimes as a candidate, you put a lot of emphasis on the technology itself, the program, the coding libraries, all of that. I think what's really, really important, what they look for, is your ability to solve problems. That's what they really need. I've had so many amazingly talented engineers, software developers come in the door and they say, they know Java, everything like the back of their hand, but they're so stuck to process and coding libraries that I'm not sure that that's what we need, that's going to help us raise the bar. They want you to be creative thinkers. They want you to solve problems. And they want you to be really entrenched in the business. So I would say that those are the things you should think about, approaching it from a problem-solving, soft skill perspective when you want to stick out.
Great, Natalie. So let's go on to the next question. The technical hard skills are always a necessity for people in this field. But what are some of the most valuable soft skills in your opinion? Who would like to lead?
Creativity.
Okay.
Go for it. I know sometimes that, and as an HR leader, I work really hard on the inclusion part. I think that there's a lot of emphasis on diversity, but not really creating an environment where everyone's voice is not only heard, but respected is important. And I think that, we all have a responsibility in stepping up and doing that. So I would say, go for it. Believe in your ideas, and think about ways that we aren't already. The companies want that, and be inclusive with it. Like, it's not about, you getting the shine or you getting there. Challenge your team members, challenge your manager and the ones around you to be more creative as well. I would say that those things are as equally as important as being like the best engineer.
Great.
And to add on that as well, I think this is an obvious one, but communication is obviously huge. In the interview process, being able to explain your thought process, communicate what you're thinking, why you're thinking those things is going to be important to get you in the door. But once you're in, also feeling comfortable speaking your mind with your team, asking for feedback, giving feedback, knowing how to communicate with your team, the different businesses that you're going to be working with is going to be important, along with collaboration. Being open to collaborating with different teams, learning from different teams, and working as a team. At Google, it's really important just because each team kind of runs as like their own little startup. And so if you're able to do that cross-collaboration, that'll just really take you far.
I can say patience is a big soft skill. In our skin, in our places, in these workplaces, not everyone understands your perspective. Not everyone understands why we say the things that we say and why we push back on the things that we push back. And it may take a few times before they actually get the message. And I know I've been in this position of being very frustrated. And as a man, I understand there's certain things that happen, but for the women here who are, that's
Right.
pretty much why we're here. I think it's an even deeper level of, things that I don't understand.
Right. So many layers.
So many layers. So I think the patience, not saying that you are forgiving or a pushover, but having the patience to understand that potential ignorance is something that they just don't get, and you'll have to continue, to do that without being frustrated.
Right. Right. I agree.
I know if you were to Google soft skills, Google's a verb now. So if you were to Google soft skills, right, like you would see a lot of these things that are, tallied out for you, right? And what people typically think of as soft skills, a lot of the things that we've already talked about, I think are critically important. I echo exactly what you say on communication. I think that there's a skill that isn't necessarily one that we talk a lot about that I try to really talk about whenever I'm asked this question. And it's this talent of being the observer. And being able to understand and being able to see yourself and your situation from the perspective of the observer. There's a book called The Untethered Soul that changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. We talk about this talk track that we have going on in our heads. We as women are particularly vulnerable to this. And what happens is there's no room for you to be able to read the room. And so you got to figure out how to get your talk track under control, and then how to be able to be the observer in situations so that you can understand the biases that are happening in the room, how you're being perceived in the room, so you can, in real time, make the right decisions for yourself in the next move you're trying to make. If you don't understand how to do that in real time, and if you don't start to teach yourself how to do that in real time, you are going to feed perceptions in ways that you do not want, and it is going to hurt your career, and you're going to have to backtrack and fix things later. So the sooner you can get that talk track under control, the sooner you can start to be the observer in situations. And listen, I'm just being really frank here, right? We know that to be Black in America is to walk around in a constant state of rage, right? You got to figure out how not to put your heat on situations, and figure out how to quiet that and be a little bit patient, and then figure out what your next move is, not from anger, but from stealth. Right? It's really important.
There we go. So controlling that narrative.
That's how, we all know what we do up there.
Exactly. So get out your head, guys. So how can those who need some work on those skills improve upon them? What do you think will be the first initial step?
I'm a big proponent of practice, right? Listen, I love theory, right? I'm an academician just like anybody else. I thought I was going to be in somebody's ivory tower. I did not think I was going to be in technology, right? I was going to a PhD program, and then I realized how much money I wanted to make, and I was like, yeah, that's probably not for me. So I'm a big proponent of practice. I think that Steph Curry is shooting over 90% in the playoffs, right? He's doing that not because he sits around and thinks about free throws. He practices free throws, right? All the time. You got to think about how you can set yourself up in a situation where you can practice. It does not have to be a TED Talk, right? I'm not saying you go find a TED Talk tomorrow, but there are brown bag sessions going on in your organization right now. There are smaller opportunities at team meetings. Figure out how you can put yourself in a situation where you can practice the thing that you want to practice. Ask for help. Set up scenarios. They can be fake. Nobody cares if it's real or not. Tell somebody who's in a meeting to plant a question, and then for you to respond to it, and then talk later about how you did, right? People do this all the time,
right?
All the time. We don't, because we think that we're supposed to be perfect,
right,
and that we're supposed to show up to the situation with the answer. That is not how this works. And so you can get people on your side to help you practice, and just keep practicing in safer situations, and then put yourself more and more out there in riskier spots.
Great.
Yeah, +1 to everything that you just said, because that was exactly what I was thinking. So +1, 2, 3, all of it. Another thing I would add to that is maybe kind of shift your mindset a little bit on certain things. I think it's important to think big picture and think about what the end goal is. Think about the kind of impact that you might be making and what you're getting out of that. You're learning. Any new challenge that you get to take on, you're going to be able to learn new things and bring that with you as you continue to move forward in your career. And so along with practicing, I've been here, like I said, 3 years already, and I'm still learning every day. I'm communicating with external candidates. I'm communicating with the business and my team. I'm communicating with the clients, the hiring managers. And so it just takes time to learn how to communicate effectively with each of those groups. And it took time for me to just think big picture on why I'm recruiting software engineers for Google and what that impact is going to make. The impact is the technology that we all use, right? The phones, the websites, YouTube, all of that. So, yeah.
Brian, any?
Find someone that will give you that honesty and transparency.
Great.
You might not always have an ally, but if you can find that friend, just be transparent about the things that are coming off, the perceptions, so that they can give you honest feedback. And I think that's something that's really helpful to understand. Like, you know what? Yeah, Brian, you were a little aggressive in that meeting. Let's try to fix that.
Right.
I've had people ignore it, and the friends at work that have told me that have helped me immensely and has gotten me over that hump.
Great. Scaling it down. Sometimes we have to do it. Natalie, what's your perception on this?
I would say to find your passion, find what drives you. I think that gives you the extra hustle that you need to find success. I think it's okay to try and carve out your way and not necessarily try to duplicate what you see or what you've defined as success in others, but to find and figure out what that is for you and work and focus on those things. I think that'll get you there faster.
And what about the female candidate? Because the female candidate is always the harder candidate. What are your conversations based on being a female going after these, careers and positions? How would you situate? And not only of color, just being a female, because you're always at the lower total of the spectrum. So as a male, it's a little bit more predominant because, those are more prime, candidates. What do you think as far as females is concerned? What approach should they take?
Yeah, fearlessness. Put yourself out there. I know I started out in talent acquisition as well, and I wanted to make a transition into HR. And sometimes a lot of people think it's the same thing, but not really. And trying to figure out what that path is to do that, and I had to just put myself out there. And, I think we heard some of the speakers say earlier, inserting yourself, going for it, building networks, and just not being afraid to give what you have and knowing that that's valuable.
I would say, and no disrespect for any of the brothers in the room, this is not about you necessarily, but I do find that women in particular, because of how we're socialized and we're raised, we have a tendency to err towards perfection. And what that does is it keeps you 5 to 7 years behind your male colleagues, right? Because they do not care about being perfect. They don't even care about being qualified, right? All they care about is the opportunity, right? And so I'm not telling you to necessarily be that bullish about your career, but you're going to have to step your game up in terms of risk taking, right? This whole idea that you want to have all of the chief of staff and all of the deputy qualifications before you go on to take on the role of the leader, you are going to be 5 to 7 years behind, not only in terms of your career progression, but also in terms of your money. Right? So you need to think very carefully about how much risk you're willing to take and how qualified you think you need to be. And what I would welcome you to do is to look at your white male peers and the white male people who have the job that you want and talk to them about how qualified they were before they made this next step and move, and then pattern yourself after them.
Yeah, I would say I did just exactly that. I was just like, I can do this too. Like,
Right.
And I did.
And you figured it out. You got it done. Execute it.
Yeah.
Any questions for the room? Sure, absolutely. Let's introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Akila. I didn't introduce myself earlier.
Hi,
Akila. I have a question about talent pipeline as far as like representation. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Natalia.
Because people in talent acquisition usually don't look like you. So usually the excuse is we can't find the people of color. We can't find the women. We especially can't find women of color. So how do you answer that? And what methods do you take to try to find those needles in haystack? Because what I'm trying to work on is mentoring young people, in addition to my actual work, but mentoring young people to find companies that are looking to
For talent.
Yeah, to remedy the representation issue, but also companies that can create sustainable environments for people of color. So I'm very curious from your perspective how you are remedying that.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do. Yeah, so I would say that on the business side, I really try and make sure that I get buy-in from leadership. It is absolutely a top-down thing. They need to exude the behaviors that want to hear the diverse voices in the room. That has to be a real thing that lives and resonates in the company. So those are some of the things that I try to work on in the programs, in the training, in the policies, in the culture, which is like everything, all of it, and more, right? So I think it starts there before saying like the recruiting strategies you use and the tools and the groups that you try and connect with to find diverse talent. I think that becomes like data, right? And like process and those things. But I think that when you don't work on the experience that women have when they come into the workplace, it's all for naught because they're out there. We had a whole room full of women in technology, right? They exist, but the problem is that we don't create environments where they can grow and bring impact. So I think on that side, that's something that I really work on, and I think a lot of that comes with me being truly who I am in that environment, right? And bringing that and showing what that means and making them accountable for their behaviors in those environments. So starting with that. But then from, leading just talent acquisition strategy, like how do we do that? I would say filtering in and stop like being so mechanical about what the perfect profile is and really wanting to learn and listen to how people think and how they approach solving problems, what they understand about the business, and not necessarily, the experience that they have. Because I think people should bring their entire selves to work. And sometimes your life experiences lend to your ability to be able to be what would be considered a high performer, right? How that's defined. Those are some of the things that I like to train my recruiters, especially in technology, to think about when they're, doing keyword searches, if you will.
Any other questions out there? Go right ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is
Morning.
Francisco. I'm actually one of the volunteers at the conference
Hey,
today. So if you have
Francisco.
any questions, holler at me. My question's actually regarding allyship, and it's actually a twofold question. The first part is, what are some additional ways that we as people of color can lean on our white peers to grow professionally? And how can we, for those who identify as male in the room today, be an ally to women of color, both inside and outside of the workplace?
Great question. Who wants to take that one?
I'll
Let's
start.
with Brian.
I'll start.
Brian.
So thank you, Francisco. There's many things that you can do for those who identify as male. I think one is understanding that we have that privilege and acknowledging that we have that privilege. Two is giving the platform to those other people. We can be ignorant of the things that we do have and see every day, but telling that person that you can stand on my back or my shoulders to get up to that next level, or telling them the things that they may not hear when they're not in those rooms, when they're not in those sessions, and speaking at that different level that they may not see. But I think it's also important to kind of really set the tone for pulling people up, and I think that's something that for me. Understanding that there's company culture and then there's microculture within each different group, breaking that mold to show that within tech that it's just not the white male cis type of environment. Showing that you can break that is something that's really important for me. Is that everyone can be within this world, and it's tough. I'll say that. I'll be completely transparent. It's really tough in this world because everyone's trying to make it, especially with where we are. But I also think that coming together is something that is the utmost important. Just remembering that we have that privilege and that other people aren't in that situation is, for me, the number one. Recognize it.
There we go. Anybody else out there? We have some more questions.
You want to go?
Here, let's swap rooms. Let's go with you.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. Oh, I'm so short.
Oh, it's fine.
I'm Chantal. Hi.
Hi.
So when you have an idea and there are people who really believe in your idea and they want to jump on board, what are some of the qualities that you should look for when you're looking for like co-founders or people to join your team?
Great question.
So I'll tell you what I look for in talent, right? In terms of people that I want to join my team. I'm actually going to be starting a new role with the firm here very shortly, so I'm actually kind of doing this real time.
Congratulations.
I don't know.
See,
About that. Taking a risk.
here we go.
So first and foremost, I look for people who understand the landscape, right? So when you have a new idea and you're trying to attempt to do something, it's great to have people who are passionate about your idea. That's fantastic, right? That energy will soon wane if they don't understand the landscape of what it is that you're trying to do. So I often look for people who both have passion and understand the landscape. Doesn't mean that they have to be deep in terms of a SME in a certain area necessarily, but do they understand your idea and what it is that you're trying to do? Secondarily to that, but it actually goes along with it, is what's the outcome that you're looking for? Are you clear about the outcome that you're looking for? And are the people who are asking to be on your team clear about the outcome that you're looking for? And are they down with that? Because a lot of times people are down with your idea, but they're not down with the outcome that you're looking for as a result of your idea. So I think clarity around those two things are critically important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right over here.
Hi, guys. I'm Piper.
Hi, Piper.
Hi. My question is about money, and it's always the uncomfortable elephant in the room. And
Always.
As a woman, a Black woman specifically, I always sort of wonder, where does the conversation start within the infrastructure of my company? If I want to raise, am I having that conversation with my manager? Am I building that conversation first with HR? What advice do you give just women, people in general, about the money conversation? What assets should they bring to the table when discussing a salary increase, et cetera?
Yeah, so so if I am doing my job effectively, those conversations start with your manager. There should be open dialogue. There should be continuous conversations about the difficult things. And a lot of that should always, always be about development. And I think that those conversations naturally happen when you are focused on the personal development and growth of each of your team members. And it comes with the territory, right? Because even though compensation for some isn't the leading factor, but it is very important. We live in New York City. But I think that they definitely stem with your manager and take ownership of those development conversations. Don't wait for performance reviews. Don't wait for pulse surveys. Don't wait. I do them. I have to do them. We need data, but that is not what is happening. I'm almost like, in my first 30 days, I want feedback. I want to talk about it. I have very clear questions about how performance is measured, how it's valuable to the company, what the impact is that I can bring, what I want to do beyond that. And I want to know what the value of that is to the company in my role and what that looks like. And I think that then those compensation conversations start to happen naturally because you're focused on your personal development and growth. So, but then you can always come and talk to me and I'll get those conversations going for you.
If I can add to that, I know the compensation conversation can be different at every company, but something that I do is I document everything that I do. Every project that I've worked on, everybody I collaborated with, I get feedback from everybody. That way, when I go in having these conversations, my manager typically already knows what I'm doing, but I'm making sure that he sees the impact that I had. So that way, when he's going up to his manager or the higher ups, whoever has to confirm, the compensation change, there's no question about, am I adding value to this work, and if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Because if I already have all of that written down and I have proof of it, then there should be no reason why there's a no.
Can I just add to this, if you don't mind,
Right
because
ahead.
I feel like this is something that's really important that I say, because I was just promoted last year, and I have a very close relationship with this and what it has meant. So I just want to, and actually I want to tie, Francisco, what you added together in my answer here. We talk about our white male peers and our ability to get them involved with us. Your money is a great place for you to do that. So you should have a white male person that you trust in your circle. And if you don't, you need to find one. And then you need to trust them so much that they know your numbers. If you can find somebody who's in the know, who you trust enough to know your numbers and to give you feedback on where you are relative to other people, because they would know that, and they would help you be able to know where you have room to grow, where you're well positioned, or where you should be on fire. That's a great conversation to have. It's a conversation that a lot of people are having in our absence, and we should start having that conversation more and more. So again, I know that a lot of us are very protective of our numbers. Nobody knows our numbers. We don't share our numbers with anybody. The problem with that is that you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what's going on in your head. You have no idea what's going on more broadly in the company. And you have no context for the talk track that's going on in your head about whether or not you should even be neurotic about this topic. So I would suggest that you figure out how to, and listen, it has to be somebody you trust, but you should figure out how to get somebody in your trust circle where you can start to have that data-based, numbers-based conversation about you and get a little bit more scientific about what you have going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there any other HR people in the room? Yeah. Put the ownership on the company as well. Yeah. I think that we don't put enough emphasis. I think every new startup that I go to, when I'm doing a comp and ben analysis, the first thing I'm looking at is gender equality. When I'm interviewing a candidate and I know that I have a budget, because that's what the average person is making, and I have a woman who is extremely qualified and they want to hire her, and she asks for $30,000 less than what everyone else is paying, I give her what the average is on not what she asked for.
There you go.
It has to be something that the companies are taking ownership for as well. I mean, you have to do your part and your due diligence, and I agree with everyone here. But I try to, from the business side, make it something that exists in our policies, in our behaviors. It's a part of our culture, and it becomes more of a real, tangible thing, and people feel like diversity, especially gender diversity, is important where they work. So that's something that I try to make sure is a real thing and try to make the process as transparent as possible to everyone. Here are the bands, here it is.
There we go. One more question over here. I know she's been standing there for quite some time. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Tanika. And I know it was mentioned earlier as we try to be perfectionists or a number of different reasons why this may happen. If you find yourself 5 years maybe behind where you expected or where you feel like you should be, what are the tips or the steps that you feel that person needs to take to start to get into that position where they know they should be?
I think that was based off of Tiffany.
Yeah, so a couple things. So number one, self-awareness is great. So yay, you figured it out, right? Because that's really critical to getting out of that, off that hamster wheel. The second thing is I always recommend somebody who's in that situation, find a new role, right? A lateral move is a great thing to do if you find yourself doing that for a particular amount of time, because a lateral role doesn't necessarily move you up, but puts you in a different position with a different group of people so that your ascension can start to happen from a different baseline and not necessarily with the baseline you were previously in. It is extremely difficult to change that arc from where you are. extremely difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's extremely difficult because you've already taught them how to treat you and you've already taught them what to expect from you. And it's very difficult for you to change that perception in the time frame that you want to in order to not be 80 when all of this, materializes for you. So I would say that a lateral move is a great thing to do, and you should really start to think about how you leverage your relationships to make the next lateral move happen. When you do that lateral move, you should be very clear about the receiving organization, about the fact that you're looking for your career arc to go up and that you've stagnated long enough. And how is it that we don't just have a conversation about this role, but what does my next role look like? And what does my role after that look like? Those are the types of conversations that our peers are having when they take new jobs is, what does this set me up for? And how many years do I need to do this before I have Bob's role? Right? You should get very comfortable having that conversation as well so that when you enter that organization, they're very clear about your aspirations and that you're not looking to stagnate.
Okay. Well, this is pretty much it for us. One more question? One more question.
Hello, my name is Xavier. I'm from JP Morgan Chase.
Hello.
We've spoken a lot about being confident as Black women. We've spoken a lot about being the only people in the room who look like us and being comfortable with that. But how can we take it to the next level where we're leveraging that as a resource and as a positive, that we're the only people in the room that look like us, and using that to our benefit?
Anybody?
Bring your voice. I think we heard a lot earlier about being your authentic self. I definitely bring that to my role. We have a whole lot to bring. Know that and show how your diverse experiences positively impact how they think about business. I think that it becomes really, really clear after a while, but you have to speak up. And they start to definitely, at least in my experience, see the value in that approach.
Every sister I know is super competitive, right? I have no idea why we don't bring that to corporate America. We are super competitive in so many ways, right? I would just say whatever it is that drives your competition gene and whatever it is that makes you like fierce, love that word, about what it is that you want to do and how it is that you want to be the best, figure out how to take that to the floor at work. Because when you do that, it's less about feeling like I'm the only, and it's more about I got all y'all.
Mm-hmm. We agree. Confidence. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having us.